What if I told you that in some regions across the country, students are coming out of high school unprepared for college, unprepared for work, and in many cases, unprepared for many of the challenges that life has? So why is this, and what can we as a community do to make these students more prepared and to help them take on the challenges of a life ahead? Yusuf Dahl is the Chief Executive Director of the Century Promise, and this is one of the issues he has dedicated his life to accomplishing. He joins us tonight to talk about the Century Promise, what can be done in these communities, and how his own life journey has led him to where he is today. That's all coming up right here, right now. I'm Sam Chen, and this is Face the Issues. Good evening and welcome to Face the Issues. I'm Sam Chen. It's a refrain we hear from a lot of workplaces and colleges that high school students are entering unprepared, but it's more than just can they write a good paper. There's a question of college readiness, and not just for college, but for work and for the challenges that life face. And it's no secret that this is getting worse and worse among class after class. But in certain pockets across the country, the challenges are even harder, and for a number of different reasons. The mission of the Century Promise is to address those questions, and we're joined tonight by the Chief Executive Director, Yusuf Dahl. Yusuf, welcome to Face the Issues.
I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
It's so good to have you here. Let's just start with 30,000 foot level here before we even get into kind of the stats and the numbers. What is the Century Promise?
The Century Promise is a commitment or a promise that our community is making to young people, that if they commit to our program, they invest in themselves, we will make sure that they are college and career ready upon graduation, and they will have a guaranteed job or college enrollment upon completion.
It's an organization. And
it is a nonprofit organization.
The organization you're working with here is attempting to address this problem that I said in the opening of college readiness. On your website, you write that with a college readiness score of just 7.7 out of 100, not out of 10. I thought I misread that at first.
Yeah.
It's not a 7.7 out of 10, 7.7 out of 100. Most of the youth in the Allentown, Pennsylvania region find themselves inadequately equipped to navigate the challenges of both career and higher education. What is that college readiness score?
The college readiness score looks at a lot of different factors, including the number of AP classes taken, the scores that were achieved on state level benchmark exams. So it really does look at a number of different factors to predict the likelihood that these students would be ready for the rigor of a college curriculum.
And 7.7, I mean, that's abnormally low. This isn't just they're not quite ready, they need a little bit of remedial help. This is quite below what we would expect from our students.
Absolutely, but to just give you some context, I don't think you're going to find a school district anywhere in the country that's going to be 100 out of 100. I mean,
sure.
Perhaps there's one or two elite private schools or something like that, but it is abnormally low. And so compared to, say, one of our suburban school districts adjacent to Allentown, we're 4 times less prepared. Our students are 4 times less prepared than our counterparts in adjacent communities.
This is, we can see this as a statistic, but there are underlying racial and economic issues when we look at this as well. You just brought up the one point that the inner city school districts the students come from families that are not as economically well off as the majority of those in the suburb areas. Obviously not everybody in the suburban schools are wealthy, but when we talk about means and medians, the family income is certainly higher in some of these surrounding schools. The other issue, of course, is one that's racial, whether that's intentional or not, but 85% of the over 18,000 students in the Allentown School District are Black or Latino. And what you begin to see is that this puts our Black and Latino students at a bigger disadvantage than students who are white or of Asian race. Why is that the case? It doesn't seem to be an intentional racial divide, and yet you can't deny the impact it has on on our Black and Latino students?
Well, there's a correlation between race and economics, right, as you alluded to. But particularly in the Allentown School District, which is very heavily Latino. And a number of these families or students have parents that don't even speak English. And so when the constructs and systems are not prepared to handle that, ultimately it makes it more difficult for these students to get that extra support they need to be successful. And I mean, it's important to note now, I also have a high school daughter, so I understand exactly what it's like to navigate this system. And no child does it alone, right? No child is just able to solely rely on the resources of the school district. It really does have to be a partnership between the school districts and the families to make sure that experience is tailored to best support the needs of that child. And unfortunately, every family is not able to engage in the same way. Every family cares. Every parent wants their child to be successful, but every family is not equally equipped to make sure their student is able to thrive in a respective district.
I mean, even to the degree of if both your parents have to work to get you to a paycheck to paycheck kind of situation, as opposed to both your parents work and that gets you into the top whatever percentile economically. If both your parents have to work long jobs in order that you can even have food on the table, that's going to drastically change the dynamic of if they can even attend after school activities, or if you can attend after school activities, or if you have to go to work, or if they can attend parent teacher conferences and so forth. Yusuf, the other question I want to ask you is, there is a lot of conversation about whether or not these students are even able to envision themselves in some of these roles.
That's a great point.
That you've talked about. I remember we had a forum with an attorney at Northampton Community College, and a young African-American student asked him about if you needed connections to make it in law. And his response was, he said, how many African-American attorneys do you personally know? And he said, none. And the attorney said, well, if you can't think of any, how many white attorneys do you think regularly think of African Americans as attorneys? And so, and his whole point was not to say that this was right or just, but that this is something that needs intentionality in changing. Century Promise works toward this and actually takes these students and gets them into internships and jobs. Can you talk a little bit about your process in doing that?
Yeah, and so you bring up a really good point, because there's multiple types of capital that a lot of communities are deficient in. So financial capital and the need for parents to work multiple jobs, and that's a real issue. But then also social capital and the relationships that we call on all the time to make sure our children have the opportunities and the exposure to be successful. And so one specific example at the Century Promise is we have a partnership with the Carpenters Union. So we work with one of the largest construction firms in the region called Dugan and Marcon. And Dugan and Marcon has said to us, we will guarantee jobs for the graduates of the Century Promise upon completion of the program. And so I work with the Carpenters Union, and I asked them, great people, and I said, well, give me a couple of younger Latino carpenters that I can bring into the schools with me so students can see themselves in these individuals. And I'm still waiting on them. And it's not intentional. I mean, these are great people, but the reality is, if you ask, next time you're working with a tradesman, I don't care if it's a plumber, HVAC, electrician, ask them, how did they choose to get into that particular profession? And they're going to point to a father, an uncle, a cousin, a family friend. And it really does speak to the importance of this social capital. And so the Century Promise is trying to equalize that by going directly to these employers, securing these opportunities, and then preparing our young people to thrive in them once they get in.
Yeah, I mean, that's so important. If you can't see yourself in that role, you're never going to dream
100%.
it. I want to ask you about the results you've seen. And now Century Promise is it's a fairly new 501c3.
It is.
But have you begun to see any results or any impact on the lives of these students?
We absolutely have. So we just finished our first year, and it's important to note, this initiative is really based on the premise that if we can make real the future benefit of education, right? We went to school because we understood, or our parents understood, that it would help us achieve a better life. But it's not immediate.
Right.
And so the Century Promise believes that if we can make that future benefit real and immediate, that it would change present behavior. Students, it wouldn't just be a distant possibility. Through our promise, the students would know it was real, and it would cause them to change immediate behavior. And so what we noticed for the participants that we enrolled, attendance improved. Engagement in the classroom improved, because ultimately they understood that if they did these things, it would have that payoff. And that payoff is the promise our community is making to these young people and their families.
Wow. What's the long-term goal then for these students? So one year in, your students graduate high school, what's the trajectory? Where do they go from there?
Yep. So our measure of success is not the number of students that we place in entry-level jobs or in college. We're looking out 3 years, and we're saying, what's the success rate? Have they taken that next step in their careers? Because what we have found, particularly for young people in impoverished districts, they get stuck on in that entry-level job far too long, and it has longer-term ramifications for their future earnings. So if we can prepare them so that when they get in that entry-level position, they take that next step in 2 to 3 years, and they're on that trajectory, we do know that long-term it's going to position them to not only have the financial security they need, but it's going to have follow-through benefits for the communities that they come from.
I think that's so important. It's about the continual progress. And so you don't just get them in the door. I think there's a lot of groups, well-intentioned groups, that work to get them in the door, but you're really working to get them to that next step. And as they start on that ladder, they get to that second or third rung, it becomes a lot easier for them to start going on their own.
100%.
Yusuf, we're going to go to the break. When we come back, I want to ask you a little bit how you got into working with Century Promise and kind of where your story and that vision collide.
Absolutely.
Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Face the Issues is produced and recorded in the studios of Lighthouse TV. Positively different. Watch Lighthouse TV wherever you go. Available on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. You can view our in-house studio productions on demand, or watch what's on the station right now with our 24/7 live stream. Search Lighthouse TV online on your streaming device, or go to our website lighthousetv.org for more information. Lighthouse TV, positively different.
Welcome back to Face the Issues. Yusuf, thank you again for joining us.
Of course.
We're talking about this work. It's incredibly important work, and what I appreciate probably the most about Century Promise is it's very innovative. I think there's a lot of times you hear when we talk about inner city schools or students performing better, we talk about how much money do we have to throw at them to increase their test scores. And in that first segment, you didn't talk about throwing money at them, and you didn't talk about test scores. And there's just something so innovative about that approach. I want to ask you about your journey. Yep. You have had a remarkable journey. It's been well documented in multiple national outlets, including Good Morning America. Tell me a little about your story and how did you get to the Century Promise? Why is this such a passion for you?
Yeah, so the Century Promise is all about opportunity. And that certainly is a common theme throughout my entire life. When I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and really had the archetypal poverty to prison story that is well known across this country and across the world. So my family, so I was raised by a single mother, we're a perfect example where without the financial capital, without the social capital, I wasn't able to immediately make that connection between education and opportunity. And so at 18 years old, I was sentenced to prison for 10 years for the distribution of drugs. And it was while I was incarcerated that I had a chance encounter with a guy who was originally from the Northeast, had a master's degree in engineering, and made the very stupid decision to defraud the Kohler Corporation, which is based in Kohler, Wisconsin. He opened up my eyes to the possibilities that existed in information technology. He thought, you know, I was a smart guy. He thought I had talent, that I had ability. And through our relationship, he encouraged me to pursue this professional pathway that in time has taken me to work on 3 continents. It allowed me to invest in my community during the depths of the foreclosure crisis, and ultimately allowed me to achieve a full scholarship at Princeton University.
Wow. I mean, you come back to do this work now. I mean, and Century Promise is a year old. You were doing a lot of different things before that. So talk to me a little bit about your journey out of Princeton and grad school through how you got to here. I know you had a few different stops.
Yeah. So immediately after graduate school, I was recruited by a university to build their innovation and entrepreneurship program. So I spent 5 years there really trying to build the infrastructure so that young people could develop the capacity to not only conceive ideas, but to execute upon them. And that's not really something that's historically taught in colleges and universities, right? They tell you they teach you how to think, but what's most important oftentimes in this society is execution, and that's just not historically what's taught there. So I spent 5 years building that program, and I was approached by a gentleman named Lee Butz. And Lee Butz is a well-known philanthropist and entrepreneur in the community that I come from, Allentown, Pennsylvania. And he shared this vision he had to transform the lives of young people in Allentown and to provide that hope and optimism and the resources to make the most of their God-given talents. And his enthusiasm for this initiative was so infectious that I knew I had to be a part of it, because extending opportunity to people who have not historically had it, nothing gets me more excited to get out of bed every morning.
Do you think your life would have been different if you were in something like the Century Promise while you were in school?
There's no doubt, right? There's no doubt. And one of the things that I bring to my work, and I bring to everything I do, is a level of authenticity. And so I truly do understand the disadvantage that a lot of these young people are feeling and experiencing. But I also understand that there comes a point where you have to accept responsibility for your circumstances, even though you did not control them, and you have to dictate a new future. And the Century Promise is all about providing those resources for those young people to do just that.
In his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey has this quote that says, "I'm not the product of my circumstances, I'm the product of my decisions." And what I admire so much about your work is that the Century Promise is trying to help these young men and women to step into that. And it's not that circumstances don't hamper us or give us advantages. They do. I think all of our circumstances are either a privilege or some kind of hampering, but those can either make us or break us. And you're helping these young men and women turn those circumstances into part of that decision-making process. And I deeply admire the work that you're doing. I want to ask you,
if I could just interrupt you, and I have to be clear, it's not just the work I'm doing, it's the work this community is doing. Because it would not be possible if it wasn't for folks like Lee Butz and the great men and women who serve on our board of directors. So I thank you for that, but it truly would not be possible if it was just me.
Humble too, so you got the whole package, Yusuf. I want to ask you, so you started doing this, And when you think about your story and how you got here, and you look at the young men and women that you're helping, and some of them, their parents have been incarcerated, some of them have run-ins with the law, what advice, if you could say something to them, and I'm sure you often have the opportunity, what do you tell them to even get them to make that first step?
That their future is in their hands. And it's really so important for them to understand that, because the decisions that we make as young people have significant ramifications as we get older. And sometimes I think about the opportunities that my daughter has and the benefits that she enjoys. They are unlike anything anyone in my family has ever experienced. I mean, going back as far as I possibly can. You know, my grandfather did not graduate high school. My father was in prison. My older brother was in prison. My daughter right now is doing math that I didn't get exposed to until I was in college. And I remind her every day that with that privilege comes a responsibility. Sure. But to be able to break that cycle that has plagued my family for generations has been the most satisfying thing that I have ever accomplished. And all of the sacrifices, all of the hard work I've had to do has made it worth it. And I remind these young people that they also have that ability to redefine the opportunities that their families and their children will have access to. And that's the message I often give.
And I'm going to close this segment with this question. I think, I hear your story, 18, and for distribution of drugs. And you think if you were a year younger or 2 years younger, you probably would have had a 10-year sentence. Yeah. You look at that, do you ever get bitter? And if not, I mean, how did you keep yourself from getting bitter? And instead, I mean, you've taken the story and turned it into an incredible journey and work that you're doing. How did you do that?
Well, we don't control often the things that happen in life. We only control how we respond. And I've made a conscious decision to always try to turn my disadvantages and my setbacks into opportunities, right? And to leverage those for the benefit of others. So, I mean, everything happens as it's supposed to, and I just thank God every single day for the opportunities that I've had and the impact that I've been able to have on others.
Wow, that's it's good advice, and I just appreciate that you live that advice out as an example for your daughter and for the students you work with, but for the community. So thank you, Yusuf.
Thank you, Sam.
Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Watch Lighthouse TV wherever you go. Available on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. You can view our in-house studio productions on demand, or watch what's on the station right now with our 24/7 live stream. Search Lighthouse TV online on your streaming device, or go to our website for more information. Visit lighthousetv.org to stay connected. There you can find out what's currently on the air and coming up, how to watch in your area on cable, satellite, broadcast, or streaming devices. Watch past programs or our live stream. Follow us on social media and learn more about the station, our hosts, and our programming. Lighthouse TV, positively different.
Welcome back to Face the Issues. Yusuf, thank you again for sharing your story and your journey with us. In closing, I want to bring this back to the Century Promise. You guys are a year in, you're already doing so many incredible things. I want to ask, how can the community come alongside you and your colleagues in this work? I mean, I know there's a lot of work to be done, there's a lot of students to be reached. How can the community pitch in to help?
Yeah. You know, as we talked about earlier, this is truly a community effort, and we do need the support of this entire community to make this impact. And so, you know, we do a lot of different things with these students, so there's a lot of different ways people can support. I mean, through their time, through their talent, or through their treasure. And so we do everything from professional development workshops to make sure these young people are ready to get into the workforce. And parents listening who have teenagers will fully understand that kids do not come out naturally ready to get into the workforce. There's a lot of redirecting we do every single day to make sure our kids are ready. A lot of our students don't get that at home. And so we do workshops on, email communication, professional dress, interviewing, etc. So that's one way people can give back with their talent. I mean, obviously they can make a donation to our website and that will support our work. And then for our employers out there, if they want to partner with us and make space and opportunity for these young people who are hungry and who are prepared to become contributors to their organizations, we would love to talk to them as well.
And is there a specific kind of employer you're looking for, a specific field of work, or is it open to anyone?
Well, right now we are focused on the growth sectors in our particular region. So we work very closely with the building trades, we work very closely with healthcare, and we work very closely with manufacturing and professional services.
Okay. And then you mentioned too the website, and just for those who want to contribute, what's the link that they should go to?
They should visit centurypromise.org. Please visit centurypromise.org. Learn more about our organization, and if you're so inclined, you can give directly on the website.
So centurypromise.org. Very good. Yusuf, let me ask you, just thinking a year in, when you look to the future of the Century Promise, what are your hopes? Where do you hope to grow? And what do you hope to see come about this in the next, say, 5 years and 10 years?
The ultimate vision is that the people we are helping now will help others in their family and in their communities. So it'll have this exponential effect. And I often talk about, I don't know if you're familiar with the donut business in California, but it's dominated by a particular ethnic minority. And what happened was, the person came in, moved to California, started a donut business, became successful, and those around him saw his success and began to emulate him. And now, of course, they're cannibalizing each other because they own the entire market. But that's what can happen, right? And so my goal is that the young people we're helping will now open up the doors for others behind them, and we will have had an exponential impact on the future of young people in this community.
And that is how to do business growth. It's not one by one, it is an exponential style of growth. You guys are using that same model to help people. I think it's incredible. Yusuf, thank you for joining us, for sharing your story, and for the work that you and your colleagues do every day. I personally really appreciate it, and I appreciate you taking your time.
I thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who has supported. Thanks to everyone who has supported our organization up to this point.
Absolutely. That is our show for this evening. I want to thank Yusuf Dahl from the Century Promise for joining us. And again, you can contribute or volunteer by going to their website, centurypromise.org. Of course, I want to thank each of you for tuning in. I hope to see you again right back here next week. My name is Sam Chen. On behalf of all of us at Face the Issues, thank you and good night.